Don't forget me, little darling.
Neon fizzles above Lower Broadway like a loose tuning peg, the colored gases dueling the humid Tennessee night while tourist laughter shrinks to a hush. A few blocks away, inside a refrigerated vault, steel drawers carry stencil letters spelling legends. Today, those drawers glide open. We are not here to leer at ruin. We are here to hear the secret encore still echoing in pulverized ribs, scorched lungs, and vials of stained blood. First in line is Texas Ruby, the gravel-bright yodeler who blew kisses through crackling AM static. A pre-dawn cigarette slipped from her fingers, drapes ignited, pine boards roared hotter than a carnival calliope. Firefighters found her amid smoldering hymnals, dress hem welded to the floor. The examiners shaded her airway midnight and wrote 2 cold words: thermal asphyxiation. Yet perfume clung to the charred collar, proof she still expected company even as the roof collapsed like a failed key change. On the stainless table, her right hand still clenched a melted ring that pathologists had to cut away with a jeweler's saw. Inside the band, they discovered the inscription, "Sing loud or die trying," words now blistered, but legible enough to draw a hush from the interns. Highways speak next. Billy Walker, the gentle giant with velvet tenor, napped on his tour bus when a tire burst outside Fort Deposit. Guardrails shredded metal like cheap confetti, folding his ribcage and bruising the heart that delivered Charlie's shoes. The report called it blunt force trauma, but a dab of boot polish on the ceiling showed he tried to stand for his wife as the world inverted. Among Walker's personal effects was a lyric notebook miraculously intact despite the crash. Blood spatter dotted the margins in a perfect 3/4 waltz pattern, prompting one examiner to whisper that even his injuries kept time. Soon afterward, Johnny Horton's Plymouth collided with a swerving drunk outside Milano, Texas. The impact tore his aorta in 2 and embedded windshield crystals in his guitar pick guard, as though the instrument threw itself forward to block the blow. He bled out before paramedics arrived. The body still radiated engine heat when examiners diagrammed internal ruptures shaped like broken noteheads. During cleanup, a trooper found Horton's harmonica 50 yards from the wreck, reeds bent into dissonance. When blown, it exhaled a ghost chord that sounded suspiciously like the intro to North to Alaska. Jack Angland never reached Patsy Klein's memorial. Racing down a rain-silver curve with lilies on the back seat, he hydroplaned. The steering column punched through his sternum. Petals and blood shared the same red tint. Death certificate, instantaneous chest trauma. The lilies wilted in the morgue sink, which smelled faintly of gasoline and hymn arrangements. Angland's funeral wreaths, though soaked with rain and gasoline, gave off sweet fragrance that masked the scent of formalin. Mourners later claimed the chapel smelled like spring despite December frost outside. Dottie West trusted a neighbor's Corvette, late for Opry rehearsal. The throttle kissed 80, construction cones blurred, and a guardrail speared the floorboard, crushing her pelvis. Surgeons cycled fresh blood faster than they could warm it. Autopsy cited hepatic laceration and hemorrhagic shock, but a nurse recalled her tapping 4/4 time on the bed rail until the monitor drew a final flat line. The crash tore one heel from West's glitter shoes. Medics taped it beside her foot on the gurney, preserving stage glamour inside clinical plastic. The sky became the next accomplice. Patsy Klein's Piper Comanche corkscrewed into a Tennessee swamp at 175 miles an hour. Her wristwatch froze at 6:20 p.m., crystal cracked like pond ice. Nearby lay Hawkshaw Hawkins and Cowboy Copas, torsos rearranged by violence so severe the report used the phrase complete anatomical disruption. Investigators noted that Klein's lipstick tube survived, cap secured, shade A-list red. Even at terminal velocity, she kept her image precise. 2 summers later, a Beechcraft carrying Jim Reeves vanished into murk. Wreckage surfaced 2 days on. His face remained oddly serene beneath matted mud, jaw muscles still set as if finishing a lyric. Cause, blunt trauma, compounded by drowning in red clay water. Reeves wore a monogrammed tie clip that left a perfect rectangle of untanned skin beneath his jaw, a stark contrast to the mud mask death provided. John Denver built his own experimental aircraft, trusting rivets over record sales. During a test flight near Monterey Bay, the fuel select valve jammed. Witnesses watched the plane drop like a dislodged feather, nose first. Examiners cataloged shattered vertebrae, broken neck, and dismemberment severe enough to require dental charts. Toxicology: clean, wind only. Denver's flight bag contained a cassette marked "New Chorus Idea." Strangely, the tape remained unspooled, silence preserved on magnetic ribbon. Smoke returns as a villain, smoldering like an ashtray at closing time. Eddie Rabbitt masked coughs with jokes until x-rays bloomed with tumors that looked like spilled ink. He told fans nothing, finished one last tour, then surrendered. Pathologists compared the riddled lungs to storm clouds cut away from the horizon. Technicians opened Rabbitt's trachea and found dark residue smelling faintly of saccharin, evidence of decades sweetening morning coffee between radio interviews. Roger Miller followed, throat scarred by decades of smoke and motel coffee. Vocal cords arrived at the lab like frayed banjo strings. The cancer had already composed its encore, leaving only silence for technicians to transcribe. One pathologist hummed "King of the Road" while sewing Miller's incision. Another joined for the chorus, before both realized their microphones were still recording notes for the report. Porter Wagoner, rhinestone evangelist, collapsed after a sprint of studio sessions. Lung cancer advanced so quickly it seemed to borrow tempo from his stage patter. Autopsy slices revealed tissue the color of wet charcoal and lymph nodes knotted like guitar cables. Wagoner's sequined jacket, removed for the autopsy, shed tiny rhinestones across the scales, forcing staff to recalibrate after each sparkle-infused weighing. Jerry Reed, the high-speed fingerpicker, spent his final months tethered to oxygen. Emphysema shrank his lungs into tired balloons. Dissection exposed honeycomb scars mapping every cigarette break he once called a thinking minute. Reed's calloused fingertips drew special interest. Examiners photographed the ridges as unique as fingerprints, each a mini topography of chord changes. Marty Robbins escaped one quadruple bypass only to lose the rematch. A rogue clot turned repaired vessels into clogged plumbing. When the sternum reopened, the surgical team smelled antiseptic and cologne, a Sunday hymn spliced with diesel from racing circuits he loved. Inside Robbins's chest cavity, surgeons discovered a tiny toy race car, a gift, his grandson said. He kept in his shirt pocket for luck at every procedure. Tammy Wynette lived on a drip of painkillers pumped through a hidden port. The final rhythm came when her heart flickered at home. Toxicologists counted more than 15 sedatives, each legal, together lethal. Her catheter bag still pulsed translucent amber, keeping time nobody could hear. The implanted pain pump played a faint rhythmic click that nurses described as a metronome marking the final verse she never recorded. Hank Williams Sr. greeted the new year in the back seat of a baby blue Cadillac, veins staging a bar fight between alcohol, morphine, and chloral hydrate. The heart weighed double, ventricles thick as fiddle strings dipped in ice. Across the front seat, his unused guitar ticket stub lay spotless, like a promise undelivered. In Hank's coat pocket, they found a signed telegram dated December 31st, promising $400 and a room heated as warm as whiskey. Irony gilded the morgue. Keith Whitley auditioned for Oblivion with a 0.47 blood alcohol score, skin smelling of oak barrels. Examiners drained veins the color of sorghum syrup, surprised any beat remained long enough to greet the ambulance siren. Whitley's last glass sat half full on the kitchen counter. Forensic images captured the amber liquid refracting morning sunlight like stained glass. Elvis Presley collapsed in Graceland's bathroom, pupils frozen mid-dilation. His bloodstream tallied 14 pharmaceuticals, including traces of amphetamines and a whisper of coke. Cardiac muscle cells ballooned like overworked backing singers. The king exited before the encore. Among scattered prescription bottles lay a paperback on karate philosophy. The king had underlined a sentence: "The greatest battle is with oneself." Faron Young sat amid gold records, pressed cold steel beneath his chin, and let a single round remix his portrait. Surgeons fought for 30 hours, but the bullet had already silenced tongue and spine, divorcing voice from words. Young's revolver was engraved with musical notes spiraling toward the muzzle, a custom piece nobody remembered seeing until the autopsy photos. Tom T. Hall sipped porch tea, watched sunset glaze Kentucky hills, walked inside and wrote a cruel coda with a pistol. Deputies called it a self-inflicted finale. The pathology diagram traced a perfect quarter-inch corridor through memory and melody alike. Hall's notepad contained one unfinished line: "Sometimes the storyteller walks into the story." The coroner framed the page to keep ink from smearing. Naomi Judd battled storms within for decades. One afternoon, she closed the bedroom door, leaving a note of practical instructions and a revolver. The bullet's journey was swift. Autopsy confirmed the wound and cataloged decades of medications for mood disorders, a chemical biography longer than any tour program. Judd's dresser held a jar of glitter, each fleck inscribed with a fan's name in microscopic script, proof she collected gratitude like fireflies. Trace the pattern and you find speed, smoke, altitude, chemistry, gunmetal, and despair sharing the same Nashville ZIP code. The coroner's Latin may sound clinical, yet between those syllables vibrates ambition turned brittle. Char streaks in Texas Ruby's airway match the tar that darkened Roger Miller's lungs. The whiskey haze suffocating Keith Whitley rises from the cracked windshield that severed Johnny Horton's voice. Even Patsy Klein's frozen wristwatch ticks in unison with the stopped metronome that haunted Dottie West's hospital suite. All these artifacts, tagged in brown envelopes, now reside in a climate-controlled basement. Together they form the strangest chorus, a necklace of broken things still singing. Still inside every ruined organ glimmers refusal. Ruby sang while rafters blazed. Walker reached for family through airborne shrapnel. Klein released one last perfect high note before aluminum screamed. Hank scribbled, "I'll never get out of this world alive," as casual punchline. Elvis rehearsed gospel harmonies mere hours before collapse, chasing a cleaner resonance the pills could never supply. When mortuary lights snap off, Lower Broadway switches hers on. Cover bands smuggle ghosts into set lists. A Ruby yodel, a Hawkins growl, a Presley hiccup. Plastic cups rise in salute, unaware each vibration once ricocheted off corpse drawers. A steel guitar tremolo is the echo of an embalmer's suction hose. A snare crack mirrors a rib snapping beneath paramedic palms. Listen for it. When the drummer clicks 4, a drawer slides shut on the downbeat. The breath between verses is the silence where a heartbeat failed. The soaring final chorus that feels larger than the room is 21 spirits harmonizing across time zones, reminding us that art outruns oxygen. Picture the morgue itself. Fluorescent tubes flicker like cheap stage lights. Stainless trays gleam like freshly polished dobro resonators. A ceiling vent rattles in B-flat. Formalin mingles with coffee in the air, giving the place the strange aroma of a late-night diner built inside a chemistry lab. Instruments sit ranked in velvet-lined cases, bone saws humming at the pitch of a fiddle drone, scalpels sharp enough to shave a grasshopper, forceps curved like high notes. Each tool waits for its solo on tissue that once vibrated with applause. The pathologist, half historian, half detective, keeps a playlist of the deceased on an old phone. While slicing through intercostal muscles, he quietly taps his foot to their recordings, allowing the living voice to guide the blade. He says it helps him map the damage because every skipped beat on the record foreshadows a skipped heartbeat in the flesh. He knows exactly how many inches of scar tissue hide beneath Hank's baritone or Tammy's vibrato. Strangest of all is how the injuries mirror the instruments each singer favored. Slide guitar maestros arrive with ribs that glide apart like fretboards. Finger-picking virtuosos present with wrists bent in impossible chords. Crooners dependent on oxygen show lungs that collapse with the soft hiss of a backstage smoke machine. In death, the body remains a loyal instrument, echoing its chosen timbre. Fame, too, has fingerprints. It clings to adrenal glands, swelling them like festival balloons, forces cortisol tides that erode arteries, and scripts insomnia so profound that night pills become morning pills without anyone noticing the switch. Under a microscope, the stress looks like glittering sand, sparkling yet abrasive, lodged in blood vessel walls of people who once commanded entire audiences to sway in unison. Maybe that is why the stories feel familiar no matter how foreign the details. We all have backstage doors inside us. Some remain locked, others swing wide for every passing temptation. Fast lanes, late planes, quick fixes, quiet guns. The difference is that most of us don't sell tickets to our private downfall, don't leave behind platinum records to soundtrack the coroner's shuffle across tile. Chemistry deserves its own encore. The pills in Elvis's pocket rattled like castanets. Hank's flask glinted like stained glass under dashboard light. Keith's last bottle wore a lip print shaped like a minor chord. Doctors chronicle milligrams and proof points, but the numbers never capture the desperation that whispers, "Just one more, you owe the crowd." Sometimes the whisper wins. Airplanes form a tragic harmony of their own. Klein's cockpit clock, Reeves's bent propeller, Denver's severed control cables, all are broken strings in a sky that refuses retakes. Wind has no audience, yet it memorizes the final scream and recites it down canyon corridors for decades. And then there is gunmetal, the most decisive producer in show business. One squeeze, and the mix is finalized. Mono, irreversible, guaranteed to chart only in obituary columns. Faron, Tom, and Naomi hired that producer when applause faded into tinnitus, when inner voices outshouted the crowd. Outside, Nashville keeps minting hopefuls. Bright-eyed kids busk by hot dog carts, dreaming of Opry lights. They see the rhinestones, not the hospital bracelets, hear the encores, not the ventilator alarms. History's caution tape flutters beside each venue, invisible but solid. Imagine then, the after-hours Opry, an impossible theater stitched from memory and speculation. The curtains are cobwebs, the spotlight a single fluorescent bulb stolen from the morgue ceiling. Texas Ruby steps onto phantom boards, gown still smoldering at the hem. Billy Walker joins, rib brace clicking like castanets. Horton drags a microphone cable that unspools into infinity. Angland follows carrying the lilies that once prefigured his own service. Dottie West limps across tape-marked planks, pelvis patched with silver staples. Behind them rise Klein, Hawkins, Copus, specters sewn together by gravity, mud, and unsung chord changes. Reeves strides in mud-caked boots. Denver swoops overhead with a broken wing but perfect pitch. Rabbitt, Miller, Wagoner, and Reed layer harmonies high and sweet, lungs ragged but eager. Robbins grabs a toy race car, revs it along the apron, then hands it to Hawkins, who pockets it beside a shattered wristwatch. Wynette adjusts her pain pump to 58 beats per minute, matching Hank's skeletal foot tap. Whitley raises a half-full glass, Elvis counters with a karate bow. Faron Young whistles one clear note that hangs like frost. Hall scribbles lyrics on the air itself. Judd scatters fan letter glitter until the house sparkles like July fireworks. Instruments materialize. Guitars smelling of formalin, drums built from specimen buckets, fiddles strung with suture thread. They launch into a rendition of "Will the Circle Be Unbroken" so haunting that even the pathologist downstairs pauses her report to listen. Each voice carries the timbre of its cause: smoke rasp, bourbon slur, wind howl, gunshot echo, pill-muffled sigh. But together they blend into something unclassifiable. The ceiling bulb flickers, threatening darkness, but the melody refuses to stop. By the final chorus, the walls themselves tremble, plaster dust swirling like stage fog. Then, as if obeying an unseen conductor, every ghost bows. The bulb blinks out, and the only remaining trace is the smell, a bizarre perfume of sawdust, kerosene, nicotine, saline, and cheap aftershave. drifting through the ventilation ducts to mingle with Lower Broadway neon. Some janitor on the night shift will inhale that cocktail and wonder why a chill banjo run skitters up his spine. He'll never know the answer, but you will. So take those chills home. Remember, every tune you stream was bought with flesh and breath, and true songs never die. They simply rest, waiting for someone brave enough to drop the needle again.